Chosen ones, take a deep breath. What I'm about to share with you is not just important, it is urgent. If you are watching this right now, understand that this is not by chance. There are no coincidences in the kingdom of God. You were led here because something in your spirit is calling you to listen. God is waiting, and this is your moment to respond. But be warned, this is not an ordinary message. This is the final step, the defining moment that will determine everything that follows. Something powerful is unfolding in your life, whether you realize it or not. You have felt it, the stirring in your soul, the shifting of the atmosphere, the divine pressure urging you forward. What you have prayed for, longed for, and even suffered for is no longer just a distant hope. It is moving toward you right now. But here's what no one tells you. This shift is not automatic. It requires action. A moment will come when hesitation is no longer an option. That moment is now. The truth is, if you do not step into alignment with what God is revealing to you in this season, you may not survive what is coming. This is not just about elevating your mindset or making a small change. This is about life and death in a spiritual sense. The forces moving in this hour are not gentle. The battle between light and darkness is intensifying, and God has positioned you as a warrior in His plan. But a warrior who refuses to move when called is a warrior who falls. Before we go any deeper, there are 3 things you must do. First, like this video, not as a casual gesture, but as an act of agreement with this message. Second, subscribe, because this is not just another channel. It is a divine assignment, and together we are pushing toward the mark of 100,000 chosen ones standing in unity. And third, leave a comment with the number 777. This is more than just a number. It is a spiritual signal, a declaration that you are awake, aware, and ready to step into your divine calling. To those of you who have supported this mission through super thanks, may you be blessed beyond measure. Your generosity is not just seen, it is felt. And God, who sees all things, will multiply what you have sown in ways you cannot yet comprehend. Something is shifting in this very moment. The final step is before you, but only you can take it. The question is, will you? Or will you turn back now when you are closer than you have ever been? Stay with me, because what comes next will change everything. God's chosen ones, do it or die. God is waiting. Final step. Here it is, the moment everything has been leading up to. Every trial, every lesson, every hardship has been preparing you for this exact time. God has been shaping you, refining you like gold in the fire, because this is the moment when your faith will be tested in ways you never imagined. You're standing at a crossroads, and the path you choose now will determine everything. Will you step boldly into the calling God has placed on your life, or will you let fear and hesitation hold you back? Think about it. How many times has God given you signs, nudging you forward, whispering to your spirit that it's time? This is not just another opportunity. This is the defining moment, the point of no return. In the Bible, Abraham faced this kind of moment when God commanded him to leave everything he knew and step into the unknown. Genesis 12:1-4. He had no roadmap, no guarantees, just the voice of God and a promise of something greater. If Abraham had hesitated, if he had given in to fear, would he have ever become the father of many nations? The same question now stands before you. Will you trust that what God has planned for you is far greater than what you can see right now? The enemy knows how powerful this moment is, and he will do everything in his power to stop you. He will whisper lies of doubt, remind you of past failures, and try to paralyze you with fear. But what if the miracle you've been praying for is just on the other side of this step? What if the only thing standing between you And the breakthrough is the courage to act. David faced this exact battle before stepping onto the field with Goliath. 1 Samuel 17:45-47. The giant seemed impossible to defeat, but David didn't let fear dictate his decision. He stepped forward in faith, knowing that victory belonged to the Lord. Are you willing to take that same step, believing that God has already gone before you? Real-life examples of faith in action surround us. Consider Elon Musk, a visionary entrepreneur who risked everything multiple times to pursue what he believed in. Whether you agree with his methods or not, his relentless faith in his mission changed industries. Now, imagine the impact when faith is placed in something even greater, God's plan for your life. The world may not understand your journey, and people may doubt your calling. But when God is the one leading you, nothing can stand in your way. God knows your heart, your struggles, and the depth of your desires, but He also sees what's waiting on the other side of your obedience. He is not asking for blind faith. He is asking for trust based on everything He has already done for you. How many times has He made a way when there seemed to be none? How many battles has He already won on your behalf? This is your moment to prove that your faith is stronger than your fear. It's now or never. Will you take this final step, or will you let it slip through your fingers? God is waiting for your answer. There are moments in life that separate those who walk in faith from those who remain trapped by fear. This is one of those moments. Right now, heaven is watching, and God is waiting for you to decide. His hand is outstretched, ready to guide you into a season of abundance, growth, and divine favor. But God will never force you. He wants you to choose Him, to step forward willingly, to trust even when the path ahead is uncertain. Will you take His hand, even if it means stepping into the unknown? Will you trust that His promises are greater than your pain, that His plans are bigger than your fears? Think about Moses standing at the edge of the Red Sea, Exodus 14:13-16. The enemy was behind him, and an impossible barrier stood before him. To the natural eye, there was no way out. But God had already prepared the way. Moses just needed to take the step of faith and stretch out his staff. And when he did, the waters parted. Could it be that your breakthrough is just waiting for you to act? Could it be that all God requires is for you to trust Him enough to move forward, despite how impossible things seem? God has written a plan for your life, one that far exceeds anything you've ever imagined. His blueprint for your destiny is filled with purpose, power, and divine favor. But here's the truth: you must choose to step into it. He won't force your feet to move, and He won't drag you into your calling. You must decide whether you will trust His timing and power, or let fear convince you to settle for less. Look at Joshua. When he stood before Jericho, the walls were high, the gates were shut, and from a human perspective, the battle seemed unwinnable. Joshua 6:1-5. But when Joshua followed God's command, even when it didn't make sense, those walls came crashing down. Your obstacles may seem overwhelming, but what if your obedience is the key to tearing them down? Consider the life of Thomas Edison. Before becoming one of the greatest inventors of all time, he faced thousands of failed experiments. Most people would have given up, but he saw failure as part of the process. His relentless pursuit of invention led to the creation of the light bulb, something that changed the world. Now, imagine the impact when faith is placed not in human ambition, but in the God who created the universe. How much greater will your testimony be when you trust the one who holds all power? What if the struggles you've faced are not failures, but lessons meant to guide you toward your divine purpose? If you've been waiting for the perfect time to move, let me remind you, God's timing is always perfect. The moment He calls you is the moment you are ready, even if you don't feel prepared. He is working behind the scenes, aligning everything for your breakthrough. but he is waiting for you to take the step. When Peter saw Jesus walking on water, he had a choice: to stay in the boat where it was safe or to step out onto the waves. Matthew 14:28-31. The miracle didn't happen while Peter stood still. It happened the moment he moved in faith. Is it possible that the very thing you've been praying for is waiting on you to take action? There is no more time for hesitation, no more time for second guessing. This is your divine moment, and God is calling you to rise up and act. If you delay, if you let fear convince you to stay where you are, you risk more than just missed opportunities. You risk staying trapped in a cycle of disappointment, regret, and unfulfilled purpose. You've waited long enough. The time is now. Everything you've been through has prepared you for this. The challenges, the struggles, the heartaches, none of it was wasted. God has been using every trial to refine you, to equip you for what comes next. But the next chapter of your life cannot begin unless you turn the page. The enemy will try to convince you that you're not ready, that you're not worthy, that you'll fail. But that is a lie. God has already placed within you everything you need to succeed. The question is, will you believe him? If you choose to remain stuck, to let fear keep you from stepping into your destiny, you're not just delaying your future, you're placing a barrier between yourself and what God has for you. He is calling you to trust him completely, to surrender every doubt and step forward in faith. You already have everything you need. Now, it's time to act. Trust in his promises, move forward, and watch how God opens doors that no man can shut. Your breakthrough is waiting. Will you take the step? As you take in these words, be aware that there are forces actively working to prevent this truth from sinking into your heart. The enemy's greatest tactic is distraction, keeping you so entangled in doubt, worry, and confusion that you hesitate instead of stepping forward in faith. He wants your mind cluttered with uncertainty so that you second-guess the very calling God has placed upon you. But you cannot allow yourself to be swayed. This moment is too important, and your destiny is too valuable to be derailed by fear. Think about Nehemiah when he was rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem, Nehemiah 6:1-3. His enemies, Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem, did everything they could to distract him, to lure him away from his mission. They sent messages, stirred up opposition, and tried to instill fear in his heart. But Nehemiah refused to be pulled away. He responded with unwavering focus, saying, "I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down." Nehemiah 6:3. Can you adopt that same mindset today? Can you recognize that what God is doing in your life is too important for you to be distracted? The enemy will try to whisper lies, telling you that you're not ready, not strong enough, not worthy of the calling on your life. But these are deceptions designed to keep you stagnant. The truth is, God has already given you every resource, every gift, and every ounce of strength needed to walk in your purpose. When David faced Goliath, King Saul tried to weigh him down with armor that didn't fit. 1 Samuel 17:38-40. But David understood that God had already equipped him with everything he needed. He didn't need extra armor. He just needed to trust in the weapons God had placed in his hands. A simple sling and 5 smooth stones. What has God already given you that you may be overlooking? Even in modern times, history shows us that the most successful people had to push past distractions and discouragement to fulfill their purpose. Consider J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter. Before she became a household name, she faced rejections from numerous publishers, financial struggles, and personal hardships, but she refused to give up. Now, imagine the impact when faith is placed not in personal ambition, but in the divine plan of God. If she could push past distractions to achieve her earthly success, how much more can you accomplish when you are walking in God's anointing? Distractions are not the enemy themselves. They are simply the tools the enemy uses to shift your focus. The enemy knows he cannot take away God's promises, so he works to make you doubt them instead. But you must stand firm. Stay locked in on the vision God has given you, just as Paul encouraged in Philippians 3:14. I press on toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. Keep your eyes fixed on the goal and refuse to let anything pull you away from your divine assignment. Right now, you have a choice. Will you allow distractions to steal your focus, or will you rise above them, knowing that God's plan for you is bigger than any obstacle in your path? The breakthrough is not a matter of if, but when. Stay strong. Remain focused and keep your eyes on God. Victory is already yours. Will you step forward in faith and claim it? As you take each step closer to your breakthrough, you might begin to feel a wave of resistance rising against you. It may manifest as fear, self-doubt, or a deep sense of discouragement. You may feel as though something is pulling you away from your faith, away from your calling, and away from the very breakthrough you've been waiting for. But recognize this for what it truly is. This negativity is not from God. It is a calculated strategy of the enemy, a last-ditch effort to keep you from stepping into the fullness of what God has prepared for you. Do not be deceived. The enemy knows that you are on the verge of something extraordinary, and his only hope is to plant seeds of doubt to make you retreat. But what does the Bible say? For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. 2 Timothy 1:7. If the fear and discouragement you are feeling are not from God, then where are they coming from? The enemy will use whatever he can, your past failures, your insecurities, or even the opinions of others, to make you question your worthiness. But let me remind you, you are not fighting for victory, you are fighting from victory. God has already declared that you are more than a conqueror. Romans 8:37. Will you stand in that truth? This storm of doubt is temporary. It is merely a test of your faith. When Jesus and his disciples were in the boat, a sudden storm arose and fear consumed them. Mark 4:37-40. But while they panicked, Jesus slept peacefully. Why? Because he knew who was in control. The moment the disciples turned to him, he calmed the storm with just his word. The same God who silenced the raging sea is with you now. Will you let the storm dictate your faith, or will you trust in the one who controls it? When negative energy rises, do not allow it to paralyze you. Instead, counter it with the truth of God's word. Every time fear whispers, "You can't do this," respond with, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." Philippians 4:13. Every time discouragement says, "You're not enough," remind yourself, "Greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world." 1 John 4:4. God's plan for you is unshakable. His promises are unbreakable, and his power is greater than any obstacle in your path. Consider the story of Colonel Sanders, the founder of KFC. Before achieving success, he faced rejection after rejection, more than 1,000 times, before someone finally believed in his vision. He was in his 60s, an age when many would have given up, but he refused to let failure stop him. Instead, he persevered, and his faith in what he was building eventually changed the fast food industry. Now, imagine how much greater the impact is when faith is placed not in personal ambition, but in God's divine plan. If a man like Sanders could push past failures to achieve earthly success, how much more should you press forward for a spiritual breakthrough, knowing that God himself is backing you? This is the moment that everything hinges upon. You have endured trials, setbacks, and countless challenges, yet here you stand, right at the threshold of something extraordinary. The weight of your journey has brought you here, and all of heaven is watching. Will you take this final step of faith, or will you allow fear to steal what God has placed before you? This is it, the moment of decision. The divine opportunity you have been praying for is right in front of you. Will you take hold of it, or will you let it slip away? God is waiting for your answer. It may feel overwhelming. It may feel as though you're stepping into the unknown with no clear direction, but that is precisely where faith flourishes. Faith is not about walking on a path already visible. It's about trusting in the one who has gone before you, even when you can't see the way. God has already paved the road for your breakthrough, and He is calling you to step forward with boldness. Will you trust Him enough to move even when you don't have all the answers? This is not just another opportunity. This is your divine appointment. There are moments in life that come and go, but this is one of those rare moments that will define your future. The door is wide open, but you must make the choice to walk through it. Think about Peter when Jesus called him to step out of the boat and onto the water. Matthew 14:28-31. The waves were high, the winds were strong, and every logical part of his mind told him to stay where it was safe. But the moment he fixed his eyes on Jesus and stepped out in faith, the impossible became possible. Could it be that your breakthrough is waiting on just one act of faith? Will you walk through the door before this moment slips away? Your breakthrough is not a question of if, it has already been prepared. God has already gone ahead of you, removing obstacles and aligning things in your favor. But there is one requirement: you must take action. The promises God has spoken over your life won't just fall into your lap without your obedience. Every great move of God in the Bible required someone to act. When the Israelites stood before the walls of Jericho, God had already declared victory, but they still had to march in faith. Joshua 6:1-5. When the woman with the issue of blood sought healing, she had to push through the crowd to touch the hem of Jesus' garment. Mark 5:25-34. What step of faith is God calling you to take today? Will you move forward, or will you let hesitation keep you from receiving what is already waiting for you? Maybe you feel like you've been waiting forever, like you've prayed and prayed, but nothing has changed. But the truth is, your breakthrough is closer than you realize. God has been working behind the scenes, moving mountains and opening doors you don't even know exist. But just like a key must be turned to unlock a door, your faith must be activated to step into the next season of blessings. If you wait for everything to be perfect before you act, you may miss what God is trying to do right now. Remember, God's promises are not based on human timing. They are based on divine purpose. Your role is not to figure out every detail, but to trust the one who holds the details in his hands. Think about Walt Disney. Before he became the man behind one of the most successful entertainment empires in history, he was fired from a newspaper for lacking creativity. He faced countless setbacks and financial failures, but he never let those obstacles define him. He kept moving forward, believing in the vision he had been given. If a man with earthly ambitions could overcome rejection and failure to build something great, how much more can you accomplish when your faith is anchored in the eternal promises of God? Your struggles are not the end of your story. They are simply part of the refining process through which God is preparing you for something far greater. Every trial, every moment of waiting, every challenge is molding you into the person God created you to be. What you see as a setback is often the very thing God is using to position you for your breakthrough. Will you trust that His plan is bigger than your present difficulties? Will you step forward in faith, knowing that He is leading you to something greater? The choice is in your hands. Act now, or risk delaying what has already been prepared for you. God has not forgotten you. He sees every tear, every sleepless night, and every silent prayer you've whispered when no one else was watching. He knows the weight of your struggles, the depth of your pain, and the battles you've fought just to keep going. But He also knows something far greater, the destiny He has placed within you. You were not created to be defeated. You were not chosen to live in fear or to drown in despair. The greatness within you is not defined by your hardships, but by God's promise over your life. He who began a good work in you will be faithful to complete it. Philippians 1:6. Your breakthrough is not only coming, it will be far greater than the pain you have endured. The trials you have faced do not cancel out God's calling on your life. His promise for you is still intact, untouched by the enemy's attempts to derail you. Trust in His timing, for His plans are always perfect. Right now, you may feel surrounded by obstacles, but those obstacles are nothing compared to the size of your God. The enemy will do everything in his power to make you want to give up. He will whisper lies, telling you that you're not good enough, that you've failed too many times, or that God has abandoned you. But let me remind you of something powerful. God's promises are unshakable. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. Matthew 24:35. What He has spoken over your life is eternal. Will you choose to believe His truth over the enemy's deception? No matter how many times you stumble, no matter how exhausted you feel, God's word remains unchanged. He is not finished with you yet. When you feel like quitting, remind yourself why you started. Think back to the vision God gave you, to the dreams He placed in your heart. Those dreams are still alive because the one who gave them to you is still moving in your life. The enemy wants you to quit because he knows what's coming if you keep going. But here's the truth. God's plan for you cannot fail. The only way the enemy wins is if you stop believing. This is not the time to give up. Keep pressing forward. Keep declaring God's promises. Keep fighting, keep trusting, and keep believing, because God is walking with you every step of the way. Hold on to His promise, no matter how tough the road gets. Look at Joseph. His journey was filled with betrayal, rejection, false accusations, and imprisonment. It seemed like every step forward was followed by 2 steps back. But what the enemy meant for harm, God turned for good. Genesis 50:20. Joseph's suffering was not pointless. It was the process God used to elevate him from the pit to the palace. Imagine if he had given up in prison, believing the lie that he had been forgotten. He would have never stepped into his divine purpose. What if the struggles you're facing right now are not barriers, but preparation for something far greater? What if God is using every hardship to shape you for your elevation? Consider the story of Steve Harvey, the famous comedian and television host. Before achieving success, he lived out of his car for 3 years, struggling just to survive. He faced rejection, failure, and financial ruin. But he held on to his dream and kept pushing forward, believing that his struggles were not the end of his story. Today, his success is undeniable. But what if he had quit when things looked impossible? Now, think about this. If a man with worldly ambitions could persevere and rise above challenges, how much greater is the reward when you are walking in alignment with God's divine plan? Your journey is not in vain. Every trial you've endured is refining you for something extraordinary. Your path may feel long, and at times it may seem impossible. But remember, Joseph waited years for his promise to be fulfilled. Every moment of hardship was a stepping stone to his destiny. God is doing the same for you. What you see as a delay is actually divine preparation. Your struggles are not a sign that God has abandoned you. They are proof that He is equipping you. Your pain is not punishment, it is positioning. Your trials are not meant to break you. They are meant to build you. And your breakthrough is not a distant dream. It is already in motion. Trust the process. Stay faithful. Keep believing, even when nothing makes sense. Because what God is doing in your life right now is setting you up for something beyond your wildest imagination. The question is, will you endure the process long enough to see the promise fulfilled. Your elevation is coming. Don't give up now. The waiting season can feel endless. It may seem like you're standing still while the world moves forward, as if your prayers have been forgotten and nothing is changing. But the truth is, God is working in ways beyond your understanding. His hand is moving behind the scenes, aligning things perfectly for your breakthrough. Just because you can't see progress doesn't mean God isn't preparing the way. His timing is never off, and His promises never fail. Will you trust Him even when the answers are delayed? Waiting is not a punishment, it is a season of preparation. Every moment of waiting is an opportunity for God to refine you, to stretch your faith, and to build your endurance. Look at Joseph. After receiving a dream from God, he didn't step into his destiny immediately. Instead, he was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, wrongfully imprisoned and forgotten. But in every trial, God was shaping him. When the appointed time arrived, Joseph didn't just step into a blessing. He stepped into leadership over Egypt. Genesis 41:39-41. What if your current season of waiting is the very thing positioning you for something greater? What if the delay is actually God's way of strengthening you for the responsibility that comes with your breakthrough? It's easy to grow weary when nothing seems to change, but God is never late. His perfect timing is always at work, even when it doesn't align with your expectations. When David was anointed king, he didn't immediately take the throne. Instead, he spent years running for his life, facing trials that seemed to contradict God's promise. Yet through it all, God was molding him into a leader, shaping him into the king he was destined to be. 1 Samuel 16 to 2 Samuel 5. Could it be that your waiting season is not a setback, but a setup for something bigger than you imagined? Think about the life of Nelson Mandela. Before he became a global leader, he spent 27 years in prison, enduring hardship and isolation. Many would have lost hope, but instead of letting the waiting break him, he allowed it to prepare him. When he was finally released, he was not just a free man, he was a man refined, strengthened, and ready to lead a nation. Now, imagine what God can do with your waiting season when you surrender it to Him. If human endurance can lead to such transformation, how much more can divine preparation lead to something beyond what you can imagine? The wilderness is something we all must walk through at some point in our journey, a time of refining, testing, and transformation. But it is not a place of abandonment, it is a place of preparation. Just as the Israelites wandered through the wilderness before reaching the promised land, you too are being prepared for something greater. The Israelites had to learn dependence on God, to trust Him for provision, direction, and protection. Deuteronomy 8:2-4. Likewise, your wilderness season is where God is teaching you to trust Him completely. When you feel lost, frustrated, or discouraged in the waiting, remind yourself that the wilderness is temporary. It is not where your story ends. It is where your faith is strengthened. Your breakthrough is coming, but it requires preparation. If you received your blessing too soon, would you be ready for it? Would you have the wisdom, endurance, and strength to carry it? God is not withholding your breakthrough. He is ensuring that when it arrives, you are fully equipped to walk in it. It may feel like you've been wandering through this season for too long, but the truth is, you're closer than you realize. Every step you take in faith, even the difficult ones, is bringing you closer to the promise God has spoken over your life. What if today is the day you choose to trust Him wholeheartedly, even without visible signs? What if this is the moment where everything shifts because you refuse to give up? Keep pressing forward, because your promised land is closer than you think. The wilderness won't last forever, but the blessings that come after will. The wilderness may feel endless, the path uncertain, and the journey exhausting, but the destination is worth every struggle. Do not give up now. Keep moving forward. even when the road feels steep and the burden feels heavy. Even when it seems like nothing is shifting, trust that God is working behind the scenes in ways beyond your understanding. He is using this season to refine, strengthen, and prepare you for something far greater than you can imagine. Every step of obedience in the wilderness is bringing you closer to the promise He has declared over your life. Stay strong, remain faithful, and keep moving forward in the power of God. Faith is the key that unlocks your breakthrough, but faith alone is not enough. It must be coupled with persistence. Many people start their journey in faith, but only those who persist through hardship reach the fulfillment of God's promises. Abraham had faith that God would give him a son, but it took years of waiting before Isaac was born. Genesis 21, 1-3. Noah had faith that God told him to build the ark, but it took persistence to keep building when the world mocked him. Genesis 6:13-22. The road to your breakthrough may be long, but those who trust God and refuse to quit will see rewards far greater than they ever imagined. In the face of challenges, faith will sustain you, but in the face of doubt, persistence will push you through. Think about the woman with the issue of blood. She had been suffering for 12 years, yet she refused to give up. When she heard about Jesus, she didn't just believe, she acted. She pressed through the crowd, determined to touch the hem of His garment, and the moment she did, she was healed. Mark 5:25-34. What if she had given up before taking that final step? What if she had believed the lies that she was too far gone, or that healing wasn't meant for her? Your breakthrough is coming, but will you press through, even when it feels impossible? Consider the story of Sylvester Stallone, an actor who struggled for years before achieving success. Before Rocky made him a star, he was rejected by countless film studios, forced to sell his own dog because he couldn't afford food, and nearly lost all hope. But he refused to quit. He held on to his vision, believing that his moment would come, and when it did, it changed his life forever. Now imagine what can happen when your faith is placed not in a dream of personal success, but in the divine calling God has placed on your life. What doors will open when you refuse to let go of His promises? This is your moment. Right now, God is calling you to take that final step of faith. Don't allow fear, doubt, or negativity to hold you back from walking into the destiny He has prepared for you. The breakthrough you've been praying for is waiting on the other side of your obedience. Like Peter stepping onto the water, this is your opportunity to trust God beyond what your eyes can see. Matthew 14:28-29. Step forward in faith and watch as God moves in ways beyond your imagination. Your future is waiting. Don't let anything stop you from stepping into the fullness of what God has for you. His promises are certain. His plans for you are greater than you can comprehend, and your breakthrough is just beyond the horizon. Take the step. Trust Him completely and see your life transform in ways you never thought possible. This is your moment. Will you take it? In the midst of your struggles, it's easy to forget the truth about who you are. The world may try to define you by your failures, your past, or the hardships you face, but those things do not determine your worth. You are a child of the Most High, created with divine purpose, anointed for a calling greater than anything you can imagine. God has chosen you, and His hand is upon your life. No matter how difficult your journey has been, your identity in Christ remains unshakable. You were not made to be defeated by your trials. You were made to rise above them. When life tries to convince you that you're not good enough, that your dreams are out of reach, or that your situation is hopeless, remind yourself of who you are in Christ. You are not just another person trying to survive. You are an heir to God's kingdom, clothed in His righteousness and empowered by His Spirit. The enemy will whisper lies, hoping to trap you in fear and despair, but you have the authority to silence him. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. Isaiah 54:17. God has already declared victory over your life, and nothing the enemy does can change that. Your struggles may be real, but they do not define you. The world may see challenges, but God sees preparation. Every hardship is shaping you, strengthening you, and refining you for the purpose He has set before you. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. Jeremiah 29:11. His promises are not just for some distant future, they are for you right now. The trials you are facing are not evidence that God has abandoned you. They are proof that He is preparing you for something far greater. Your breakthrough is not merely the end of your struggle, it is the fulfillment of God's promises that have been written over your life since before the foundation of the world. Trust in who God has made you to be, and step into the identity He is calling you to walk in. The pain you are enduring is not meaningless. It is a process of transformation. Just as gold is refined in the fire, you are being refined through your trials, molded into the person God destined you to become. Think about Joseph. He was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused and thrown into prison. His journey was filled with pain, rejection, and uncertainty. But in the midst of it all, God was preparing him for something greater. When the time was right, Joseph went from the prison to the palace, stepping into his divine calling as the ruler of Egypt, Genesis 41:39-41. His suffering was not wasted. It was the very thing that positioned him for elevation. What if the struggles you are facing now are not meant to break you, but to build you? What if your current trials are setting you up for a future beyond anything you've imagined? Consider the story of Tyler Perry, a man who faced years of homelessness and rejection before stepping into his purpose. He endured setback after setback, but he never let his struggles define him. He held on to his vision, trusted the process, and today he stands as one of the most successful figures in the entertainment industry. But imagine if he had given up in the wilderness season. How many lives would have remained untouched? Now think about this. If a man with earthly ambition can rise above adversity, how much greater will your victory be when God Himself is the one guiding your path? If the weight of your current challenges feels overwhelming, take heart. Your struggles are not the end of your story. They are the beginning of something extraordinary. What you are walking through right now is not meant to destroy you, but to elevate you. God does not waste pain. He uses it to strengthen your faith, deepen your trust, and refine you into the person He created you to be. You are standing at the edge of something magnificent. The only question is, will you trust God enough to step into it? Will you believe that your suffering is not in vain, that your waiting is not wasted, and that your breakthrough is already on its way? Hold on to His promises, walk in your divine identity, and know that what He has prepared for you is greater than anything you can comprehend. Your destiny is waiting. Will you step into it? Your breakthrough is not just about escaping hardship. It is about the transformation that God is bringing forth in you. Every challenge, every delay, and every trial is part of His divine process, shaping you into the person He has destined you to be. It may not feel like it now, but your struggles are not meaningless. They are stepping stones leading you higher. Instead of being discouraged, recognize that your pain is being used for a greater purpose. God has already promised that all things work together for good to those who love Him, to those who are called according to His purpose. Romans 8:28. Even in this very moment, though you may not see it, God is orchestrating every detail of your story to align with His perfect plan. The trials you are facing today are not setbacks. They are preparations for the glory that is to come. Just as gold is refined in the fire, you are being purified, strengthened, and elevated through your struggles. Think about Esther. She was an orphan, taken from her familiar surroundings and placed in a position she never expected. For a time, it may have seemed like she was lost in uncertainty, but God was positioning her for a divine purpose. When the time came, she had to step forward in faith and risk everything by approaching the king to save her people. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? Esther 4:14. What if your current struggles are not obstacles, but divine preparations for something far beyond what you can imagine? It is easy to focus on the weight of your struggles, the pain of waiting, and the uncertainty of the future. But in the midst of it all, you must remind yourself that God's promises are greater than any hardship you are enduring. His word has never failed, and it never will. God is not a man that he should lie, nor a son of man that he should change his mind. Numbers 23:19. What he has spoken over your life will come to pass, no matter how impossible it may seem. The enemy may try to discourage you, to make you feel abandoned and forgotten, but God's promises stand firm. He has not forgotten you, and he never will. You may feel like you've been waiting forever, like your prayers have gone unanswered, but God's timing is never wrong. What if the very delay you are experiencing is God's way of ensuring that when your breakthrough comes, you are fully prepared to handle it? Look at Moses. God gave him a calling, but before leading the Israelites, he spent 40 years in the wilderness, being prepared for his destiny. Exodus 3:1-12. David was anointed king as a young man, yet he spent years running from Saul before he could sit on the throne. 1 Samuel 16:13, 2 Samuel 5:3-4. God's promises always come to pass, but they come at the right time, not necessarily our time. Will you trust him enough to wait with faith? Think of the countless heroes of faith, Abraham, Moses, David, who faced trials and impossibilities but never let go of God's promises. They were tested beyond what seemed bearable, yet God's word proved true in the end. Abraham waited 25 years for his promised son, Isaac, Genesis 21:1-3. Moses led an entire nation through trials in the wilderness. David fought battles before he stepped into his kingship. Their stories remind us that the greater the promise, the greater the preparation. If God is making you wait, it is because he is preparing something bigger than you could ever expect. Your pain is temporary, but God's promises are eternal. The struggles you are facing now are not meant to break you, but to refine you for the next level of your destiny. Your breakthrough is not just about relief. It is about the fulfillment of God's purpose in your life. What if the moment you've been waiting for is closer than you think? What if God is waiting for you to trust him fully before he releases what he has prepared for you? Don't let your pain make you forget the greatness of God's promises. Your breakthrough is near, and the glory that awaits you far outweighs the struggles of today. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. 2 Corinthians 4:17. Hold on to hope, stand firm in faith, and trust that God is about to fulfill every promise he has made to you. The best is yet to come. Will you remain steadfast until it arrives? Waiting is never easy. It's natural to wonder if God has forgotten about you, if he hears your prayers, or if the delay means something has gone wrong. But I want to remind you of a truth that stands firm through all time. God's timing is always perfect. He is never late, never indifferent, and never unfaithful to his promises. What may seem like a delay is not a denial, but divine preparation for the breakthrough he has planned for you. Trust that even when you cannot see it, God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating events in your favor. He is aligning the right people, the right circumstances, and the right opportunities at the perfect moment. Think about Esther, an orphaned girl who by the hand of God was placed in the palace, not knowing that she would one day save her people. Esther 4:14. For years, it may have seemed like her life was taking unexpected detours, but in reality, God was positioning her for a moment of destiny. Could it be that your waiting season is not wasted time, but a divine setup for something greater than you ever imagined? The waiting period is not a time to lose faith. It is a time to strengthen it. God is using this season to mold you, refine your character, and increase your endurance. When you feel weary, remember that those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. Isaiah 40:31. Your waiting is not in vain. Every prayer, every tear, every moment of perseverance is building you into the person God has called you to be. Your breakthrough is not just about the blessing. It is about the preparation that ensures you are ready to handle it. It's easy to focus on how long the wait has been, but what if God is protecting you from something you cannot see? What if the delay is ensuring that when you step into your blessing, you will have the wisdom, strength, and faith to sustain it? Consider David, anointed as king while he was still a shepherd, yet he spent years running from Saul before he finally took the throne. 1 Samuel 16:13, 2 Samuel 5:3-4. The years of waiting were not wasted, they were training. Could it be that God is using your current trials to equip you for the responsibilities that come with your breakthrough? Think about Oprah Winfrey, a woman who faced rejection, setbacks, and hardships before becoming one of the most influential figures in media. She was told she wasn't fit for television, but she didn't allow the delay to define her. She kept pushing forward, believing that something greater was ahead. If she had given up, she would have never stepped into her purpose. Now, imagine how much more powerful your breakthrough will be when your faith is anchored not in personal ambition, but in the unfailing promises of God. The waiting period is not a time of inactivity, it is a time of divine preparation. God is refining you, testing your faith, and positioning you for His perfect plan. When the timing is right, He will move in your life in ways that will leave you in awe. His timing is always better than yours, and what He is preparing will exceed your expectations. For the vision is yet for an appointed time. Though it tarries, wait for it, because it will surely come. Habakkuk 3. Do not give up now. You are closer than you think. In the meantime, trust that God knows exactly what He is doing. He has never failed you before, and He will not start now. His perfect timing is a testimony of His faithfulness to you. Will you hold on to faith long enough to see the promise fulfilled? Your breakthrough is not just on the way, it is already in motion. Hold on, trust Him, and prepare your heart for the incredible things He has in store for you. We often misunderstand the wilderness, seeing it as a punishment when, in reality, it is a place of preparation. Just as the Israelites spent 40 years in the wilderness before entering the Promised Land, you too are in a season of refining and strengthening. God is using this time to deepen your faith, build your endurance, and prepare you for the blessings He has planned for your future. Though it may feel like a dry and desolate place, the wilderness is not meant to break you. It is meant to make you. The wilderness is not the end of the road. It is the pathway to your destiny. Every obstacle, every delay, and every challenge you face in this season is shaping you for something greater. God is teaching you to trust Him more, to rely on His strength, and to believe in His promises, even when the circumstances seem impossible. When Jesus was led into the wilderness, it was not for punishment, but for preparation. Before He began His ministry, He spent 40 days fasting and being tested by the enemy, Luke 4:1-13. Yet through that experience, he emerged in power, ready to fulfill his divine mission. Could it be that your wilderness season is not a sign of abandonment, but a setup for your breakthrough? If you are feeling weary, take heart. God has not left you in this place alone. In fact, he is closer to you now than ever before. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. Psalm 34:18. The lessons you are learning in this season will prepare you for the greater responsibility and purpose that awaits you. The Israelites learned to depend on God for manna, water, and direction. What is God teaching you to rely on him for? What if the very thing you are struggling with today is the very thing God is strengthening within you for the future? The wilderness may feel like a barren desert, but in reality, it is fertile ground where your faith and trust in God will grow. When seeds are planted, they do not immediately sprout. They must first be buried beneath the soil, unseen, while their roots develop. Just because you cannot yet see the fruit of your labor does not mean God is not working beneath the surface. Stay faithful. Keep moving forward. Trust that God is preparing you for a future filled with blessings and purpose. Your pain is not meaningless. It has a purpose. It is difficult to see it now, but every struggle, every setback, and every disappointment is playing a role in God's greater plan for your life. Just as gold is refined in the fire, you are being refined through your trials. The heat of the process may feel unbearable, but it is producing something invaluable within you. Strength, wisdom, endurance, and a deeper connection with God. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. James 1:2-3. Could it be that what you are enduring now is building the very perseverance you will need in your next season? Think about Steve Jobs, the visionary behind Apple. Before reaching global success, he was fired from his own company, rejected and forced to start over. But instead of giving up, he used that season of setback as a time of growth and refinement. Years later, he returned to Apple and led it to become one of the most influential companies in the world. If an earthly vision could push someone to persevere through hardship, how much more should you, as a child of God, trust the divine process that is preparing you for something beyond what you can imagine? When Ruth lost her husband and left behind everything she knew, she had no idea what was ahead. She chose to follow Naomi, not because she saw an immediate reward, but because she trusted in something greater. She entered a season of uncertainty, but God was working behind the scenes. In her obedience, she found favor, and in due time, she was positioned to be part of the lineage of Jesus Christ. Ruth 4:13-17. Could it be that the loss, change, or challenges you are facing now are not the end of your story, but the setup for a divine appointment beyond your wildest dreams? Your suffering is not wasted. It is part of God's perfect plan for your growth. Do not let pain define you. Let it refine you. Every season of hardship is a season of preparation. The struggles you are facing today will not last forever, but the lessons they teach you will. God is preparing you for something greater than you can comprehend. Will you trust Him enough to endure the process? Keep pressing forward, knowing that the trials of today are shaping you for the victory of tomorrow. Your promised land is ahead. Don't stop now. Your breakthrough is closer than you realize, and when it arrives, it will be worth every moment of struggle. Every challenge, every hardship, and every delay has been part of the refining process, preparing you for what God has in store. Perseverance is the key to unlocking the victory that has already been written in God's plan for your life. No matter how difficult the road has been, if you refuse to give up, you will see the hand of God move in ways beyond your imagination. The journey may be long and filled with obstacles, but God's word assures us that those who persevere in faith will see victory. Let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Galatians 6:9. The enemy thrives on discouragement, using setbacks to make you question whether your breakthrough will ever come. But remember, even setbacks are setups for something greater. Keep pressing forward, for your victory is already secured in God's promise. The Apostle Paul reminds us that we are more than conquerors through him who loves us. Romans 8:37. The power of perseverance lies in the understanding that no matter how many times we stumble, God is always there to lift us up. David, before becoming king, faced relentless battles and spent years running from Saul. At times it must have seemed like the promise over his life would never come to pass. Yet he never stopped trusting in God's plan, and at the appointed time he stepped into his destiny. What if your moment of elevation is just ahead? What if the very thing you've been praying for is only one more step of faith away? Hold on to your faith, because victory is coming, and when it does, it will be sweeter because of the trials you endured. Every act of perseverance is a declaration of trust in God's promises. With each step forward, you are moving closer to what He has already prepared for you. The enemy wants you to believe that it's too late, that you've missed your chance, or that God has forgotten you, but those are lies. God is not a man that he should lie. Numbers 23:19. If he has spoken it over your life, it will come to pass. Think about Walt Disney, a man who was fired from his first job because he was told he lacked creativity. He faced rejection after rejection, and at one point he was so broke that he could barely afford food. But he refused to give up, holding on to his vision until it finally came to fruition. If persistence in an earthly dream can lead to such success, how much more powerful is persistence when God is the one who has called you? If Disney had stopped believing in his vision, the world would have never known his legacy. Now, imagine the legacy you will leave when you persevere in faith and trust in the divine plan God has set before you. Look at Hannah in the Bible. She waited for years, praying and believing for a child while enduring ridicule and heartbreak, 1 Samuel 1:6-20. In her pain, she never lost faith. And when her breakthrough came, she didn't just receive a child, she gave birth to Samuel, one of the greatest prophets in Israel's history. Could it be that the waiting and trials you are enduring now are setting you up for something far greater than what you originally prayed for? The breakthrough you've been waiting for is not as far off as it seems. God has been working behind the scenes, aligning everything in place. You may not see it yet, but He is orchestrating the details of your life with precision and purpose. Every prayer you've prayed, every tear you've cried, and every moment you've held on in faith has been leading you to this moment. This is not the time to give up. It's not in your timing, but in God's perfect timing, and when it comes, it will be beyond anything you could have imagined. Keep pressing forward, keep believing, and keep trusting, because your breakthrough is just around the corner. And when it arrives, you will see that it was worth every moment of waiting. Will you remain steadfast until the promise is fulfilled? The challenges you are facing right now are nothing compared to the greatness that God has planned for you. The path may be filled with difficulties, but it is leading you to a place of divine elevation. What seems like a struggle today is actually part of the preparation for the destiny God has set before you. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. Jeremiah 29:11. No matter what you're going through, know this: God's plan for your life is unstoppable. The journey to elevation often includes seasons of trials, but they are not meant to destroy you. They are meant to strengthen you. Think about Daniel. He remained faithful to God even when he was thrown into the lion's den. The situation looked hopeless, but in the end, God not only saved him, but also elevated him to a position of influence in the kingdom. Daniel 6:16-28. What if your current challenges are simply setting the stage for your promotion? What if the difficulties you face today are positioning you for greater impact and favor? Elevation doesn't come without challenges, but it comes with divine favor and blessing. God is preparing you for influence, for impact, and for doors to open that no man can shut. The key is to keep pressing forward. Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. 1 Peter 5:6. Your breakthrough is coming, and it will be greater than you ever imagined. God's promises over your life are sure, and his timing is perfect. Keep believing, keep praying, and keep walking in faith. Your elevation is closer than you think. The process is never easy, but it is always necessary. Right now, you may feel like you are stuck in the middle of a story that is full of struggle, but let me remind you, your story is far from over. God is still writing the next chapters of your life, and he is working everything out for your good. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Romans 8:28. What you are going through is not the end. It is the preparation for the next chapter, and the best is yet to come. Just as a seed must break open in the soil before it grows into something beautiful, you too are going through a process that is breaking open old things to make way for new growth. If a seed could speak, it might say, "Why am I buried in darkness? Why is this pressure so great?" But what seems like a burial is actually the beginning of something new. What if your current struggles are not signs of your failure, but the very evidence that God is about to bring forth something greater? Consider the life of Howard Schultz, the man behind Starbucks. He grew up in a poor family and faced rejection when he tried to introduce his vision of a coffeehouse experience in America. He was turned down by multiple investors, and at one point he doubted whether his dream would ever come to pass. But he didn't quit. He stayed persistent, kept pushing forward, and eventually his vision became a reality, impacting millions worldwide. If human perseverance can lead to such transformation, imagine what can happen when your faith is in God's divine plan. What doors will open when you refuse to let go of the promises God has spoken over your life? Even when things seem uncertain, trust that God is working behind the scenes. His plan for your life is perfect, and your breakthrough is on the way. You are not forgotten. You are not abandoned. Every challenge, every setback, and every tear is part of a greater story that God is unfolding. Hold fast to his promises and walk in faith, knowing that the breakthrough he has prepared for you is worth every trial you have endured. God's process may be hard, but it is always purposeful. Every delay is strategic, every hardship is refining you, and every closed door is leading you to the right one. Keep trusting in him, keep pressing forward, and watch as he brings you into a season of breakthrough and elevation. The best is yet to come. Will you hold on long enough to see it? As we reach the end of this powerful message, I urge you to take a moment to reflect on what you've heard today. The call from God is clear and unwavering. It's time for you to make a choice, to take action. You stand at a crossroads, and the path before you is not one to walk passively. God has already given you everything you need to succeed, but now he is waiting for you to take that final step in faith and obedience. This is the moment where your destiny aligns with his plan. It's not a time for hesitation or delay. Just as the Bible teaches us in James 2:26, faith without works is dead. You have been chosen, and God is waiting for you to respond. The time to act is now, for he is always with you, empowering you to move forward and step into the fullness of your purpose. Will you take the leap? Will you trust that he has already gone ahead of you, making a way where there seems to be no way? If today's message has touched your heart, I would like to ask you to support this ministry and help us spread the word. You can do so by using the Super Thanks feature to donate. Your contribution, no matter the size, makes a huge difference in continuing to share messages like this one. But whether you donate or not, I want to express my deepest gratitude to you for being a part of this community. Your presence, your support, and your engagement are what keep this work alive. Also, don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you. Subscribe to the channel for more uplifting content, and share this video with others who might need to hear it. Your likes, shares, and comments help us reach even more people with the message of God's love and purpose. We are all in this together, walking in His light, and your voice is just as important as anyone else's. I encourage you to leave a comment below and let us know how this message has impacted you. Share your thoughts, your experiences, or your prayer requests. We're here to pray with you. And finally, may God's blessings continue to overflow in your life as you walk boldly in the calling He has placed on you. He is waiting for you to take the final step. Stay blessed, remain faithful, and remember, God is always with you, guiding you every step of the way.